Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this afternoon I'm delighted to be joined on this happy Monday by Kevin Graham and Acsom Rabani. Acsom, I know you got your ticket for the game, my friend. I saw your pictures, one of which is in the background at the moment. We're going to be talking about every single moment of yesterday. We're going to be talking about the build-up, the lineup, the controversy, the character, the domination, and the meltdown. Kevin Graham, you were also at the game. Talk us through your day.
The day was quite interesting, but like I wake up transported back to the 90s in these days, and I always will do. And I always think we go into these games as underdogs, and I think the 90s has completely scarred me. That we go into these games thinking a win against them is a surprise. A win against them is, and that's the way. And I was talking to a number of guys that have been going to the football way for years and years, and they're the exact same. Mm-hmm. And they go, we still savour every victory because of our adolescence when we're growing up. I mean, I'm really, really sure a therapist would have an utter field day with all us. When we go into these games, so I would go up there early into the stadium, and I must admit, I felt calm as soon as I got into the stadium.
Right,
everything that went before, all the worries that I did have kind of went away when I got into the ground. And even at 1-0 down, I went like, well, we've got a second half here to actually come out and do it. Even the penalties, I felt quite confident. And the reason I felt quite confident was this. I felt confident of whatever the outcome was going to be. I think, yes, we deserved to win the game, but also if we lost the game, it was down to our own stupidity, and we deserved to lose the game because of our own stupidity in the 90 minutes. I'm not even going to talk about the extra 30 minutes, because we were only the team that was trying to win it in that extra 30 minutes. But our own stupidity, especially in the last 15 minutes of that second half, we probably would have deserved to lose the game as well. I think we proved that we're the better team. It was very, very much like the Aberdeen semi-final last year, where you just went, how many times are we just going to shoot ourselves in the foot as this game progresses? But we won it. I want the team to actually celebrate winning this, but I hope when they back in on Wednesday, Rodgers slaps a few heads about, because of a few heads actually do need slapped about. Well, and that's the thing. But then we took home the trophy, we won it. That's what we set up today. But I think that we've got an awful lot of things to work on. Well, but I enjoyed it. It was absolutely brilliant.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, Kev. But the first point that you touched on, and I'm going to throw this over to Acsom, a slightly younger vintage than you and I. I find this really interesting because going into the game, Acsom, you will have seen it within that fabled Acsom WhatsApp group where there was plenty of people coming into this game nervous.
Yeah.
I might even think, when you look at the evidence of what we were going in with against what we were playing against, it doesn't make sense. But Kevin touches on a really fine point here. You've got a whole load of Celtic fans who always go in feeling really nervous and worried about games and anxious, and then you've got this unbelievable self-belief on the other side. And I don't think you'll ever rid yourself of it. And I actually don't think it's a bad thing to go in with a bit of trepidation. But I was feeling that going into the game. I felt that a lot of the Acsom contributors were getting really concerned and really anxious, whereas I was quite relaxed, Acsom. And do you think it does come down to some kind of post-traumatic stress disorder from the 90s?
I think you could be. I think you're right. I think you're right, because I'd put my dad into that kind of category as well. He usually hates these games. For as long as I can remember, he can't stand them. He's just so nervous going into them, and that's regardless usually of how informed we might be going into it. He just very rarely enjoys the game or allows himself to feel too confident going into it. And it must be, like you said, the 90s trauma, as you mentioned it. And you're right, waking up and yesterday morning and seeing some of the messages in the group chat, you'd you'd be surprised to think that we're the ones that are the champions and the ones that are undefeated. But that being said, I was probably kind of in between. I didn't think it was a foregone conclusion. I didn't think it was going to be easy. I think recent history in the Hampden the semis and finals that we've had against them have been tight games. So I thought it would be tight. And we have been off it a wee bit in the last couple of weeks, coupled with the fact they've got a bit of a boost in confidence. So I expected a tight game, and that's what we got. But ultimately, I think when it comes down to it, you look at it this way: when they play at their best and we play at our poorest, what you end up with is usually a tight game that we still end up being the victors in, or the ones that have came away with the better result. When we play at our best and we're on it, we usually hammer them. And that's the two options that we've had over the last few seasons.
Yeah.
Either you've had the tight games where it's the 3 each, or the games where at Hampden 1-0 victory in the cup. That's where we've not really been playing at our best, and they've probably been pushing themselves. Same as yesterday. Like, a lot of the talk is about how well they played, but I still think over the 120 minutes, it was a fairly even game. And as Kev said, we were the ones that were looking the more likely. But the narrative will suggest that we were off it, they were on it, yet still we won. And more often than not, that's been the case. And of course, Kev's right, we will have to try and look at our own performances and how we can get better. But Alan Morrison made a good point last week. A lot of these teams are playing to stop Celtic right now.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of teams are giving us that respect, and they're totally setting up their whole game plan just to try and stop us playing. We have to find better ways to combat that. But I still think, over the course, we deserve. Well, yeah, I still think we deserved it over. If you add up the whole 120 minutes, I still feel it was a fairly even game, but we probably edged it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
What I will say, Paul, before you jump in there, I was transferred, but I was transported back to 1995 there when Tommy Burns couldn't beat them, and Andy Gorman and all of that, right? And if somebody would have told me 1995, waking up on a Monday morning in 1995 after Brian Laudrup's just bet us 1-0, right? What seemed to happen at all during that time, and after I've had a 4-day weekend and I woke up on that Monday morning and they went like that, Kevin, see on the 16th of December 2024, and I'll go, aye, you're going to wake up supporting the world's most successful football club. I would have thought I would have been one of the worst hangovers in my life, but here we are.
Well, Kev, here we are indeed. And you know what? I'm going to jump a wee bit forward on this one, right? So what does the actual win mean? Now, as Brendan Rodgers said, who's counting, right? Well, I am this morning, right? Because never in my life would I have thought that we'd be sitting in this position. And I mean that sincerely, Kev, because I had a really good chat with my cousin on the way through the game. We celebrated it at Bad. There was an Acsom fan zone, and I'll touch on that slightly because it was tremendous to see it absolutely ram-packed. And my cousin and I were talking about the fact that we were stuck on certain things for a long, long time, Kevin. League Cups. All throughout my kind of like formative years, we had 9 League Cups to our name. And it was that early 80s League Cup final when Charlie Nicholas and Murdo McLeod scored against Rangers, and it was 2-1. I think Jim Bett scored for Rangers. Bucket and down with rain. And we could not add to that until Wim Jansen, 15 years without a League Cup. Then Wim Jansen comes along. So the numbers stuck in your mind for that reason, because we couldn't add to them, Asim. It wasn't like we were racking them up.
Aye.
And it's been completely flipped. So here's a couple of numbers for anyone who hasn't got round to looking at them. So we've now won 54 league titles, 42 Scottish Cups, 22 League Cups, and the one with the big ears, 1 European Cup. 119 in total, if that's your thing. Bobby Lennox and James Forrest have now 25 trophies each, the most decorated Celts in the history of the football club, closely followed by Billy McNeil and Callum McGregor on 23 and Scott Brown on 22. So the top 5 has had a wee shuffle as well. But what I like to do, I like to look at the last generation. So let's look at the last 25 seasons, including this season. Because if we're going to talk about a League Cup, we need to talk about the last 25 seasons, including this one. So this is since Martin O'Neill walked in the door, right? 18 leagues out of 24. Sensational. 12 Scottish Cups, 11 League Cups. That includes the one yesterday. So in total, Celtic have won 56% of all domestic trophies in 25 years, right? 75% of the league titles on offer, Acsom, we've won them. On top of that, we've been in a European final. We've won 9 in a row, a quadruple treble, 6 trebles, 7 doubles, and we did it all whilst paying the bills. That was the last 25 years, Acsom. So, listen, I absolutely don't look down my nose at any fan who has only known that level of success. I wish I did when I was a kid. I thought I was going to, because my first season of going to the games was a centenary year. I thought, this is what we do. We win doubles. I very quickly realised we didn't back then. That's where we are, Acsom, and it's got to be celebrated. That's the level of domination we are currently enjoying.
Yeah, and a good kind of symbol of what you're talking about generationally is kind of epitomised yesterday. I'm going along to the game with my nephew, Isa, who's 12, coming up for 13. Big Celtic fan, been going to all the games for the last maybe 3-4 years. All he's known is success. So anytime we're talking about predictions or how he thinks it's going, and this is so even like at half time we're 1-0 down, and I said, right, so you still think we'll win? And he's just full of confidence. He's like, yeah, it's Brendan Rodgers, it's Callum McGregor, of course we're going to win. And I think it is, it's a generational thing. That's all they've known. And like you mentioned, from the turn of the century, so 25 years, a larger part of my Celtic, being a Celtic fan has been knowing that success. But I do remember that very game, Brian Laudrup, 1-0, Celtic Park, 1995. Yep. I remember that. I was.
There's hundreds of them. There seems to have been hundreds of their games in my mind.
Yeah. So when I was about like 8, 9, kind of just first getting into football, they were the dominant team. They were going for 10 in a row. So I kind of have a bit of balance of both. And then obviously since Martin O'Neill came in, it's been majority success. But it's brilliant, and you've got to celebrate it, but you can never take it for granted. And I think that's one thing you've got to say about the Celtic fans. Like yesterday, it's a League Cup game, but it means so much. We're going to celebrate that like it's the first one again that we've had after so long. And I think it doesn't matter whether we're going into them as favourites. I think that's been the way it's been for a while now. Celtic go into these games as favourites. It's almost like they're the underdogs. And that's why they seem to be getting all the plaudits in terms of performance and whatnot. But ultimately, that winning mentality shone through again. Callum McGregor not lost a cup final. Like, that's incredible. Brendan Rodgers, 100% record in these cup finals at Hampden since he's been back. Incredible. And that's why yesterday was such an emotional roller coaster. Like, from start to finish, up and down. You could hear it in the crowd. It was just a very similar to that Aberdeen semi-final last year. But obviously it means even more this time. But it just kept swinging to and from. And there were points, I'd be honest, where I thought, okay, maybe this is not going to be our day. Particularly when they went straight up and made it 3 each. You're like, this is going to be one of those days where eventually we're not going to get the better of them. But they keep on proving us wrong. They keep on showing that the mentality monsters that they are. Like, even though when it came to penalties, we lost the coin toss. We lost the end that the penalty shootouts was going to be taken and who took the penalty first. Yet still, we kept our bottle and put away 5 brilliant penalties. So, there's a lot to gloss over, and I'm sure we will. But ultimately, just another joyous day to be a Celtic fan.
Yeah, and you're right about that. The disadvantage taking that penalty in front of the Rangers fans, but it was brilliant, and it took me back to a goal that Roy Aitken scored against Rangers. Kev, where they're all singing, and obviously as soon as the big man scores the goal, every scarf disappears like that, and that happened 5 times. And the penalty shootout, which was delightful to watch. We'll get to the penalties, we'll get to Schmeichel, we'll get to Maeda, we'll get to Scalesy as well. But in terms of the game, you've told us how you enjoyed it, guys. We had a fan zone down at Barra's Art and Design. I watched the game with Quinny and Lloyd and 350 other Celtic fans. And it was a great way to watch it on the big screen. Would much rather have been in the stadium, of course. Big shout out to Chris McElwain, who got Acsom's man of the match yesterday for actually running the 3 streams. Even though we tried to join him a couple of times along the way, it wasn't easy. Before we get into the action then, right, and what went right and what went wrong, Kev, how did you feel about the lineup? Because that was the one I predicted during the week, and I was quite happy with it.
No complaints. Well, I knew Taylor was going to start because Taylor's the first choice left back, and we kind of guessed that Rodgers was going to go with a Tatty because is he maybe slightly less of a risk than Engels at this precise moment in time of the players that were eligible and available. Up top, no arguments whatsoever. That is possibly our strongest lineup at half time. It didn't seem that way, and the sub coming on, is Scalesy coming on, there's probably an argument to say that he probably won us a cup, the big man. But no, there was no arguments with me when I saw that lineup. That lineup's more than good enough to beat anybody in Scotland on our day. I says on Friday, and I'm not going to reverse that. I still think, even though I thought Hatate had a great second half yesterday, I think we saw in the first 20-25 minutes yesterday, it looked like he was going to have a shocker. It looked really like he was going to have a shocker, and I was worried at that point what Hatate we were going to see. Yeah. But in the second half, he was immense. He was really good.
How many times, Kev, has he done that this season? Second half performance. And you know, at half time, and this was kind of the rumblings around us. I don't know if it was the same in the stadium. People were calling for Hatate and Taylor to get hooked at half time. They were losing the ball a hell of a lot in that first half, Kev. And then they come out, and as you say, Hatate comes onto a game, and Taylor gets us back into the game. So we'll be talking about that as well. Let's just say there's a variety of opinions in relation to Greg Taylor in the comments. I don't want to give any kind of like negative hue to the conversation today, because we've just won the cup, right? And we're going to enjoy it. But we do have a wee look at certain things that maybe didn't go our way. Before we do that, Monty, who has been commenting on this channel for a number of years, happy birthday to you. Sagittarius. Sagittarius. Half man, half horse. There you go, right. Pat Dolan, as well as the 90s trauma, finals lost in the 80s haunt me too. So you're a wee bit older than me, Pat. Try to think of the first.
It was your birthday as well yesterday, Paul John, wasn't it? So it's quite the celebration.
Yeah, when I hit the big 4-0 Acsom, I started counting backwards, mate. So I was 36 yesterday. No, I was 34 yesterday. 34 yesterday. That's
smell the gloves brung in the ones in the 80s. I sort of remember the ones we got beat 3-2 when McCoy scored a hat trick. The 86 one when we got beat 2-1.
Chalky.
Then we've got one in the early 90s when Paul Elliott scored as well.
That was 1990, 2-1.
2-1, we got beat 2-1 then. So they ones, the 83 one sticks in my head because they were a non-entity at that point, and we were in that massive favourites, and somehow we still managed to lose it.
Did McCoy score a hat trick? I think we maybe touched on this last week. Yep. That 86 game, the thing about that 1986 was, it was controversial. Brian McClure scores a brilliant goal that is very seldom seen because we were the losing team. It was a great goal we scored. But David Hay actually took the players off the park. And then there was a follow-up in the Monday, I think, in the newspapers, where Hay vowed that Celtic would go and play their football in England. Dig it out because of the refereeing. It was a disgraceful refereeing performance. The referee accidentally sent Tony Shepherd off and then told him to come back on. Can you imagine? That happen now? Oh, go and get him. Send somebody up the tunnel. He's not actually sent off. Bring him back on. Unbelievable. I can only vaguely remember these moments, actually, because it was really 87, 88 when I was conscious of what was going on. Everything else was just omnipresent in the background. Acsom, what about yourself? Because as I say, going into the game, absolutely no complaints about the lineup. Yeah. That was how I predicted it. What about yourself?
Yeah, same. I thought the debate would have been over Taylor or Bailly, but I had a feeling Brendan would go with Taylor, who he tends to trust in these bigger games. So yeah, it's a team I think most people expected and didn't really have any issues with that. I think it's, as Kev says, it's probably our strongest team. Again, there will be people who will debate the left back position, but other than that, yeah, happy with it. And I just think we just didn't get started though. The team just didn't get started at all, and that set the tone. And I think it was Taylor and Hatate, the two that were very quickly giving the ball away quite a bit, and that just stemmed throughout the first half.
Right, that again, there's a disclaimer here. This is not me having a go at Greg Taylor. In the first 60 seconds, Greg Taylor gave the ball away twice. In the first 60 seconds, right? And I kind of said to Quinny at the time, I was like, his ball retention's really, really poor. And then he did that thing, and I think it's a confidence thing. Just to complete a pass, I see he plays safe and he goes backwards. So to make sure he's going to keep possession, he plays the safe pass. And I saw a lot of that from him. Yeah. Going into half-time then, and I'll throw this one to you, Kev, right? Because I don't know where the brain dometer is this morning, mate. But going into the half-time break, there's lots of people calling for Taylor and Hatate to come off. He doesn't do that. Brendan doesn't do that. Oh no, he takes off Austin Trusty, throws on Liam Scales, and then you look at the equalising goal scored by Taylor. It's flicked on by Liam Scales, and you think to yourself, this guy's a genius. Why do we ever question him? It's one of the moments, Kev, isn't it?
In the stadium, I'm kind of standing staring at the pitch at half time, and I'm going, Liam Scales is warming up as if he's coming on.
His hair's looking more and more Italian, even though it's ginger. He's grown it out.
I'm going, he's gone through an awful warm-up here for somebody. It's not coming on. And I says, I wonder if Trusty's injured. Then there's then he comes on, and the first thing he does, he gets the ball and he plays the ball over the top, and he turns their defence. And I'm like, oh, this is the plan here, and it worked. It really did work. He won the duels. Look, when they had that 4-on-1, he kind of falls on his butt. He slips and falls. That's only mistake that's only mistake that he sort of makes. But I didn't expect Rodgers to take Taylor off. I didn't expect him to take Hatate off. I always expected the subs to come in about the 60-minute mark.
Yeah.
If he was good, he usually gives these teams 15 minutes to sort it out. If you didn't sort it out, then you're out. Obviously, they made. Where I was in the south stand, I could see the technical area quite a bit, and John Kennedy was down every 5 minutes, saying stuff to Rodgers, and just before half time, you could see him pointing to an area, and I think that was the point where Scales was told, "You're going on. We can't allow Trusty to continue here," because Trusty was he was the trigger for their press. As soon as he got the ball, they pressed. They had highlighted him as a weak link with the ball at his feet. And when he got the ball and he dallied, they pressed. They didn't go anywhere. They didn't go anywhere near Carter Vickers when he had the ball. It was Trusty was the trigger. And I think Rodgers had that. Rodgers and then Kennedy had read that and says, "No, we're taking him out. We're bringing in Scales because Scales will knock that ball over the top quicker."
That's a good point, because Carter Vickers seemed to have a lot of time on the ball, Keith, so they weren't identifying him.
And which is really quite different, because when we played Bruges, when Carter Vickers had the ball, that was Bruges' trigger to actually press. But Rangers done it with Trusty yesterday.
I actually usually think Trusty's the one that's quite good on the ball in terms of his passing ability. So it could have been that they were wanting to prevent that, so they were pressing him a bit further forward. But whatever they were doing, it seemed to be working. In terms of Brendan kind of mentioned it after match in his interview that we just couldn't get our passing going. Everything was slow. It was ponderous. You could the goal that they scored. You could see that happening. Like Taylor, when he gave the ball away, you could see that kind of mistake coming. So it wasn't a surprise. But as Kev says, Brendan rarely will make wholesale changes at halftime or any real changes at halftime. He likes to give everyone a bit of a chance, and I was pleased for Taylor that he got that kind of redemption moment, because look, he divides opinion. I think most are kind of unanimous in the sense that he's been a good servant for Celtic, especially domestically. He's been a big part of this recent success. But I think we also acknowledge that it's an area where it's identified often as a weakness by opposition, and it's somewhere that we needed to improve for a number of years. So he was getting a lot of stick at halftime in the stadium around me as well, and I think it was nice to see him get that moment, and I think he grew into the game because he made a howler at the start of the second half as well, which almost cost us, when they were through 4-on-1, and I think that was almost a turning point for me. And I watched the game back last night, and I think Neil Lennon said it. He goes, "If they don't go on to win this now, they're going to regret that." And you just know that with Celtic, that like if teams don't punish us, especially domestically, we will punish them. So yeah, it worked out in the end. And Hatate, I think towards that's another 120 minutes for Rio, and I think that shows how far he's come this season. That he's he's been off form at times, but his fitness is improving. He's obviously getting through games, and I thought he probably ended the game our strongest player. So that's again shows you that Brendan and the coaching team, they know what they're doing.
No, without a doubt. You mentioned there, I never heard any of the comments at half time, but when Carter Vickers was faced with 4 on-running Rangers players, right, and he somehow manages to perfectly time his movement. It's all about his movement, isn't it? Shutting it down without leaving the back door wide open, and he manages to block it out. Unbelievable bit of defending by Carter Vickers. But at that moment in time, we were at the table thinking that is the turning point, Kev. And that just shows you Carter Vickers' injury problems in and out the sides over the last year or so. Remember, he missed the Scottish Cup final under Ange, didn't he, because of the injury problems that he's had. But he is a rock. He's a colossal force at the heart of this Celtic defence, Kev. And that was as good as a goal, that bit of defending.
It was, and what a lot of folk didn't actually realise, and I must admit in the stadium I didn't realise it was 4-on-1. I did not realise. I was probably too busy watching where the ball was, and I didn't actually see the runners. And when I've seen the cut back, I was like, oh, what? That is even more dangerous than what I thought it was. When you actually watch it back, people talk about, was it Barami or was it Igname or whatever his name was that played the ball to the right hand side when he had two on the left hand side. So they're saying he played the wrong ball. But you look at Cameron Carter Vickers' positioning.
Yeah.
He's forced him to go that way. He's going, this is the only ball
he's led him. He's led him down that path.
He's led him down that way. And for me, that gets an awful lot of credit just as much as the challenge, because he's forced him out there. It's not that he played the wrong ball. That ball wasn't on because Cameron Carter Vickers made sure that ball wasn't on. And if he had played that ball, it was behind the two guys, and the attack was breaking down anyway. So, the big man is an absolute beast. He's up there with Van Dijk for me.
Oh, I was going to say.
He's up there with Van Dijk for me.
Imagine the two of them together. Wow.
Well, to be fair, in terms of if you compare the two of them for what they've done at Celtic and their time at Celtic, for me, Carter Vickers is the best in my lifetime, that I've seen. He's just an absolute colossus. And you're right, what he demonstrated there was everything, because it was the game intelligence to know where he thought he'd rather him play the ball. So he showed him down that side, and then to get back in and get the block in as well. Brilliant. And I just think that sums Carter Vickers up. How many times has he done that in these kind of fixtures? The cup final last year, the semi-final year before. He's just a beast for us, and I thought that was a huge moment, because if we go 2-0 down at that point, then we are in bother, and I think it was from then on where I thought we took control in that second half and managed to get that kind of momentum where at that point you're thinking we can go and take the game away from them. It was just such a topsy-turvy game, wasn't it? Because once we got to 1 each and 2-1, you're like, this could be 3 and 4. We were all over them. And then just again, we just went into a wee shell. It was crazy. But look, cup finals are like that. End of the day, it's all about winning. And I think it's good we've got a week off now as well. I think we can recharge the batteries and hopefully get back to some of the levels we were hitting earlier. And everyone will just be feeling so good about themselves again after yesterday.
Yeah, I'm glad you managed to capture the pyro there behind you, Acsom. But that's sort of loud, isn't it?
That's the acceptable
that's the one
pyro.
that's the acceptable pyro. Absolutely. Here's the thing, right? We're getting a lot of comments similar to this now. P. O'Neill, he tunes in on a regular basis. I think that's harsh, mate. Taylor should never play for us again. And being the bastard, as we call him, get off Taylor's back. I think you do. And by the way, I'm a critic, but only when I see weaknesses. I mean, it was his, for me, I was his biggest supporter when he was playing under Ange and he was peaking and playing in that inverted fullback role. But when I look at yesterday's performance and I was looking at people that you would want a redemption from, Taylor was the top of my list. I wanted Engels to come on and do something, and I think he did. And we'll get to that as well. There's a few people still a bit concerned about Engels. Alan Robertson, for example, welcome to the show, Alan. Always good to see you, mate. Engels is a concern for me at the moment. Poor for their second goal and looks lightweight for a tall player. Bernardo unlucky again to get hooked. Right, a couple of wee bits in here to unpack. First one is, I agree with you about Bernardo. I thought Bernardo had another really good game. But see, Big Engels, I've said it before, Kevin, I'm not sure how you coach this. What a talent he has for drawing a foul. He must have been the most fouled player on the park. I think he won on his 4 free kicks. He's brilliant at doing that. See, when things are getting messy or you're under pressure, he wins us a foul.
But only when it's blatant. The amount of times that
there's a few times I overlooked it, yeah,
because he did. When you have a look, I think he was powder puff at the Rangers equaliser, the second goal. I think it was Diamande should never get that ball into the back of the net there. Should never. Engels has got that situation under control. But then I thought he had redeemed himself with that break, with him and Ralston going down that side and Kuhn and that cutback.
That was a great
I'm
goal.
right above that at the south stand up, and I'm looking down and I'm going, he's picked that out. Mm-hmm. He knows what he's doing when he's got that ball, and I'm like, that's redemption for being an utter idiot at their second goal. Yep. That is that redemption. Then 21 seconds later, what happened. And you're going, you're not catching a break. Then extra time, he's right through on goal, and he's got a touch like me at the five-a-sides on a Friday night. And you're going, big man, you're not making this easy for yourself, mate. You're not making this easy for yourself. I think a couple of times, I don't think he's up to the pace of the Scottish game at this precise moment in time. I think the physicality is really, really surprising him. Mm-hmm. But there's a player there. I just wonder whereabouts it is.
It's about adapting
in our team. I don't know. We know where he should be playing. I think that's a wee bit of a problem here. But I thought you had got that redemption with that cutback for Kuhn.
That was an amazing cutback. And when you see it from behind the goals, it looks even better. I mean, again, I do think the criticism of Taylor's been a bit harsh this morning, Acsom. And similarly with Engels, I've stood up for him. I really have stood up for him. It wasn't great yesterday, but there was moments in the game, and obviously stepped up. He took a penalty as well. Not everybody in the park wanted to take one, but he did. And that takes me back to that 1990 League Cup final. Kev, can you remember Jackanoski 1-on-1? He bottled it. It in extra time. And then I think Richard Gough scored the winner for them. And it's just wee moments like that you remember from the defeats. Aye, Jackanoski bottled it. Right, we've touched on Kuhn's goal and the fact that there was a redemption for Engels, or partly a redemption for Engels. I want to talk about Maeda's goal. We know that he scores the winner in the penalty shootout, right? But yesterday, an Acsom listener who came along to the fan zone was going on about the fact that we call him a modern-day cult icon, Dyson Maeda. And I remember all the chat like a few months ago, there were some people suggesting that he wasn't good enough for Celtic, and I could not get my head around that. And at the time, I said, if he's fit, he plays. He's one of the first names on the score on the team sheet. Acsom. And I said yesterday, the emotion of it might get you to say things and all the rest of it, different rhetoric and all that. Birthday cared, you know what, Kev? First guy ever heard saying that, right? But I said yesterday after that goal, and I've watched it back 100 times. 3 touches, Acsom. 3 touches. It's one of the finest League Cup final goals in living memory. Unbelievable. Every single touch had to be perfect.
Yeah.
And he scores it. And what a goal it was.
And I don't mean this in any disrespect to Maeda, but it's the fact that it was Maeda. You're like, because you just don't know what you're going to get with him sometimes, in terms of his touch and his, like when he's through on goal, you just don't know. But that was sublime. It was as if you're watching Pete Henrik Larsson the way he took that kind of goal, But up at Hampden, I remember years back when he chipped one over Kloss and put it in with a plum. It was just beautiful in terms of the closing. That was Dyson Maeda summed up, the closing down, the tenacity. But what you didn't expect was such a brilliant, sublime touch, and then the finish as well. It was just brilliant, and he deserves that. He might not be having the best of games, but in this fixture, how often now has he been the one to terrorise them? And then again, just for him to be the one to step up and get the winning goal, it was brilliant. An absolute hero, as you say, a cult hero, a great. I think he'll go down as a great. This is his 4th season now here, and I think the love affair with the Celtic and the fans, vice versa, it's just grown and grown each season. As you say, first name on the team sheet, and just so chuffed for him. You've seen the pictures of him and his family at the end, and what a moment. And yeah, couldn't have been happier for him. But you're right, it's going to go down as one of the great goals. I've watched it back so many times since getting home, and each time it just gets better the more you watch it.
Have they released the unique angle yet, Acsom?
Not yet, I don't think, unless I've missed it. But
it's the best thing on Celtic telly. Just that simple idea: stick a camera behind the goals. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Because you always notice something that you've not seen in real time. Maeda, cult icon. Kev, absolutely tremendous. And I'm not sure if it was Scales or Rogers after the game said he's He was ice cool. So he appears to be like that to the fans, but also to his own teammates as well, Kev.
He shunned the penalty. He shunned the winning penalty.
A beautiful technique.
Look, I'm really, really glad we didn't lose yesterday for hundreds and hundreds of reasons, right? But one of the reasons is we get to appreciate that goal. It's not the worst Brian McClare goal that we've mentioned so many times. It's not that worst goal. I mean, I've got no want or will to watch that 120 odd minutes back, right? No want or will.
I had to watch it again this morning, mate.
I've got no want or will to watch that 120 minutes. I think overall we weren't very good, and I've got no want will to actually watch that again. But I haven't even watched the 8-minute 37 seconds highlights that my Premier Sports have put up. I'll wait till the unique angle comes out, because I do not want to see their 3 goals. I want to see our 3 goals and the winning penalty. That's it. But I have seen the winning penalty. I saw the highlights of the telly, and I'm going, he shuns it. He shuns that penalty kick, and that sums him up. That absolutely sums him up. I love him. I think he's been a man short for the last couple of weeks, but in that 20-minute spell in the second half yesterday, where we started running riot, they could not handle him. They could not handle him. Then he makes it a major part in their third goal. He has to come out and stop that cross going in. He gets a bit lazy, but for that 20 odd minutes, they could not handle him, and I'm quite glad that he won it for us. And I'm quite glad that goal that he scored, we can watch now, and it's part of a winning cup final, and it's no one of them that we forget.
The lost chalky goal. I like that. We'll always refer to that goal. Absolutely.
See, when he walked up, though, for that penalty, I can't have been the only one thinking, Maeda, because he didn't strike me as someone that you'd be like, right, a confident penalty taker. I thought maybe James Forrest or someone else would be stepping up. I was definitely nervous for that one. I was like, right, okay, here goes. But yeah, it looked like a clean strike at the time, and then I watched his interview back, and he's admitted that he mishit it. But like you say, this absolutely sums him up.
It does. And the other thing, again, with Maeda, and I don't know if this is the case, this is an observation. In respect to Kuhn's amazing form this season, and it's great that he's off the mark in terms of Glasgow Derby goals as well. Can't forget that. I'm not sure if it's rubbed off on him. You know, this work ethic, the bionic man of Maeda on one side, because you see Kuhn defending for his life and all that as well. Very good at that. I mean, I know he found himself in a position against Bruges where he played the ball back to Cat Vickers. What's lost in the mix there is that Kuhn was actually doing some really good defensive work when he played the ball to Cat Vickers and kind of sold the jerseys by playing that ball. It was a bit of a really dangerous ball to play. But I think that the influence of Maeda has definitely inspired Kuhn, and I'm hoping, Acsom, that the same thing will happen with young Engels. I'm hoping that, you know, playing alongside the likes of McGregor and Bernardo, particularly McCowan, maybe not so much Hatate, different type of player, that'll kind of rub off on him, and he will progress as a Celtic player, and hopefully we'll see a better version of him in the second half of the season. Yeah,
I think he just looks like he's lacking a bit of confidence at times, maybe. But you're hoping that, you know, that yesterday, that whole experience, winning your first trophy, that's his first trophy full stop, I think, isn't it? Not just obviously at Celtic. And then getting an assist and the confidence to step up and take a penalty wouldn't have been easy. You know, you seen that there were players in the opposition team that you'd expect to have stood up and didn't. So fair play to him, and then again, you seen his interview after the game on the pitch, and he just seems absolutely buzzing, and you just hope that he'll kind of take that on, because there are points that, you know, you're watching that, and yesterday again he was getting a lot of criticism in the stands. His passing was off, but then he goes and does something brilliant as well, like the assist. So he's got it in him. I think we just need to find. I think it'll take time. I think, like we've seen with Kuhn and Bernardo, you're right. I think it just takes a bit of time sometimes to adapt to the game, the physicality of it, the speed of it, and I think he'll grow into a fine player. But right now, obviously, he just needs to bide his time. Finding his feet. That goal that you spoke about, Kev, the chalky goal in the Skull Cup final 1986. Check it out. It'll be on YouTube somewhere. But what it made me remember is, for a spell, and I don't know why they binned it, but on the Celtic website a few years ago now, they had an archive, and you could actually go in and watch like 90-minute games and all that from the past, right?
I don't know if it just cost too much to keep it online, but it was a brilliant resource. And I remember watching the Leeds United game, the proper Battle of Britain, as it was called back in the time, 1970, the semi-final of the European Cup. Because I'd just seen all the wee clips that had been edited a million times for the Celtic videos, many of which are behind me on the shelf there. And I watched the full game, and I was mesmerised by the performance of George Conley, who was already my hero at that stage, having come from the same wee mining village that I came from and my family came from. But Lisbon Lion on X, who goes by the tag TurnAOG_09, done a compilation of that particular game just randomly during the week there. And it brought back the memories of me watching it all those years ago. And it's the old Celtic TV logo that's on it. So he's obviously downloaded it many moons ago. And it shows you Connolly's brilliance for anybody who doubted just how incredible this player was. Unbelievable. Spraying balls all over the park. And it made me remember, as sad as this may sound, I've got like 500 videotapes, VHS videotapes stored up my loft, Kev, right? You know what my archiving system's like, Kevin. You've seen the books and all that stuff. So these videos are up the loft, and it's Celtic games taped off the telly, many of which were 90-minute games, going right back to like the late 70s, right through to the modern era before it became a thing that you watched online. And you just wonder, Kev, all the moments that are never used of absolute sheer brilliance, be that from a defender or a midfielder. People forget about how good John Collins was because Celtic were rotten. So a lot of the amazing passages they play and all that are lost to the depths of time because nobody's looking for that. They're just looking for the goals and the assists, Kev. And one of these days, I will get the tapes out and I will look for the best moments of Andy Payton and Pat McGinley and all these guys and John Collins, etc., Danny McGrain, all these players, because it's lost to the depths of time. We need to bring it back because you cannot forget the brilliance of them.
You're right, and there is, especially Collins, your new man crush since Matt O'Reilly's new away. So especially guys like Collins, I always go back to. It's only recently. It was the last anniversary in that. You didn't usually watch the whole of the European Cup final in 1967. It's very, very rare that you'll watch the full 90 minutes because it wasn't really available until the last big anniversary there. And I remember the first time I started watching it, and everybody goes on about Tommy Gemmell and Stevie Chalmers. Bobby Murdoch was the best player on the pitch by a country mile. But that never gets mentioned until you actually watch it and you go, how has that not been mentioned that he was the complete daddy in Lisbon that night? Because it's get lost. Yeah. The Inter Milan goalie, Sergio Jinky and all of that. Bobby Murdoch was the daddy. As you say, there's a lot of things that people just forget in the annuals of time,
Yeah, so we'll dig them out. We'll dig the tapes out, absolutely. A few other things to discuss then. We go into the penalty shootout, Acsom, and you can say everybody who scores their penalty is a hero. Schmeichel needs to be mentioned, not just for the penalty, but he made what has been described as a world-class save during the game as well. Big Schmeichel, he was at the capers. He was giving everybody verbals. I love it. I absolutely love it. I mean, that for me is just gamesmanship. And he got in the minds of some of the... and here's the thing, right? This was annoying me the entire game. Ridvan Yilmaz, right? Every single time he took a throw in, he stole at least 10 yards. Every time. To the point where I had to check with our refereeing friend, who's an amateur ref, and say, is this a new rule? Can you just take it from wherever you want? Because he's right in front of that linesman, Acsom, and he was nicking yards. And I remember watching it going, just you wait, mate, just you wait. And when he stepped up to take that penalty, I thought, I want all my yards back here. I want them back. Big Schmeichel saves it. An absolute Goliath has Schmeichel been since he came to the football club. And like Kev says, he's now galvanised by it. Know that he's not won a trophy before, but that's his first Celtic trophy, and that's huge.
The Great Dane, brilliant, honestly. Like, again, that's another reason why I was reasonably confident going into the penalty shootout. I just thought, Kasper Schmeichel, he's been brilliant for us all season, and I just felt he had a big moment in him. And as Yilmaz stepped up, I actually had a feeling he was going to be the one that was going to miss. Brilliant save, and you're right, he was doing all the kind of sports gamesmanship, and I'm all for that. Nothing wrong with that at all. And then you mentioned that linesman, by the way. I just wanted to say, I don't know, Kev, you were on the south stand as well. How bad was he Honestly,
absolutely terrible. He didn't hide his cheating.
No, he couldn't wait.
Terrible.
He couldn't wait to get his flag up for any minor wee touch, free kicks, anything. You know, I don't think Beaton had a great game at all either. You know, in terms of just setting the tone for letting them get away with so many fouls before they end up getting the bookings.
How many times, big man, have you actually seen a linesman try to referee a game?
Aye.
How many times did he stick his flag up for free kicks?
It was so noticeable. It was honestly beyond a joke. But sorry, just to go back to the Kasper Schmeichel, but it was brilliant. And again, I love watching all the interviews afterwards just to get a flavour of how everyone's feeling. And you can just see he's absolutely loving his time here, and he's a proper leader within that camp. And yeah, a brilliant way for us to win it. Him making the save and then Dyson scoring the winner. So it was a perfect end.
No, he's just bought into it, Kev. I mean, I know that there's the familiarity with Brendan Rodgers and all that, but Schmeichel is a winner. He's got that winning mentality, and that's just what we're talking about. The relentless winning mentality is why Celtic remain dominant. There was a moment in the game yesterday. You're always looking for these things. We become body language experts and all that. Of course we do, right? And there was a Rangers player went down and he had cramp, right? And see when he stood up, two guys went over at him as if he just scored the winning goal in the World Cup final. Well done. You're going to continue. What a brave wee guy you are. And I'm looking at it going, is that your level? Is that your mentality? Because we're going to beat you if it is, you know? And a winning mentality isn't something you switch on like a light switch. It's something that we've, like at the very top of the show, we're talking about 25 years, Kev, of domination. And then what happens is it's embedded. It's embedded in the club. And that was another thing, sorry to go on about this, but last summer when we brought in so many players, I said that's not healthy because that's like a third of a squad. You need to just like make small changes all the time over a period of time so that the main core and the main mentality always remains, Kev. And what we've got at the moment is a tremendous mentality. And you've seen Callum McGregor shouting over to the guys that weren't involved in the game, or the guys in the tracksuits, get over here, you're celebrating this, you're part of this, you know. So that mentality, it's embedded in guys like Callum McGregor. And again, there's a link towards why we keep going on about youth development, Kev, because you want guys to come through to be the next set of players who can take the mantle when it comes to that, who have been, you know, embedded in this culture since they were 8 or 9 years of age, like Callum, like Jamesy Forrest, Tony Ralston even. By the way, big shout out to Tony. I was critical of him the other night. I thought he was murdered the other night. I don't think he was murdered at the weekend. Kevin, you're not convinced?
He went to sleep for their third goal.
Aye.
Did he make up for it though? Come on, give him that.
What do you mean? Did he make up for it?
One wee error.
He done well. He done well for our third goal. And 21 seconds later, his head's in the clouds, and he lets Danilo on to score in front of him.
Yeah,
he needs a slap for that, and so does Dyson need a slap for his point of that, and everyone needs a slap for their point.
Who's going to slap Tony Ralston? You're not going to slap Tony.
I expect the manager or Gavin Stratting or John Kennedy to give him a.
Kennedy looks a bit handy. Kennedy looks handy. Yeah.
But you know how you were just talking about the mentality thing. I don't know if he's caught it, but I don't know if you've seen Nico Raskin giving it big time when they scored, doing all that to the fans and all that, and then lo and behold, it's him that's played a part in I think all 3 of our goals afterwards. It just shows you the difference in mentality. They like to do all that kind of stuff without any kind of justification before they've even won a game. They like to give it all that kind of chat and act the big man. And then it's him that's it's the one that's cost him. So I think that was in it. Hopefully the unique angle catches a bit of that as well.
Well, he's the guy that went down with the cramp. I seen he was getting all the plaudits for having the bravery to stand back up and play on because he had a wee sore calf muscle.
You're talking about mentality, right? Alistair Johnston's got that mentality. He played yesterday no fit. We lost a lot with Alistair Johnston running at 50% yesterday. Alistair Johnston's got that mentality. I think you can buy in that mentality and the players develop it. I really do. I think they come into an environment, and I think you've maybe saw Kuhn maybe took a wee while to get into that environment, and Engels, we hope, is just struggling to get into that sort of that mentality, that I'm going to use the hands thing. We never stop, but that is the mentality. It's there. That comes from the coaching staff, as Roger says in his press conference on Friday, and he said it again yesterday, that everything that we do is earned. And
Yes.
he looks at the coaching staff now, and the coaching staff have been there for a number of time, and they know the demands of this club. And Rodgers knows he doesn't need to be on the pitch as much as he was the first time that he was there, because Kennedy, Stratton, and all the rest of the coaches know exactly what he demands and what this club demands. There is maybe, and look, I'm going to go back. iPad, what this Gavin Stratton day sitting there looking at the Neil Lennon season, the COVID season, right? I completely slaughtered them. I wanted them all emptied, to use one of Rodgers' own words. But then you hear Rodgers talking about them, and you even hear Neil Lennon talking about them again when Rodgers in that interview.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sort of boot room there, ain't there?
Yeah.
These guys have got that mentality that they know what it takes. One of the things that I loved about yesterday was Callum McGregor. Callum McGregor yesterday, when Conor McLaughlin got him on the pitch, the first thing McGregor said was, "We weren't up to any of your levels." Yeah. And that takes me back to Aberdeen in 1982, when Alex Ferguson, when Aberdeen bet Rangers 4-1 to win the Scottish Cup, and Ferguson was absolutely human.
Yeah,
because of the performance. And that's what I like. And I think Rodgers will be more critical behind doors than what he was in public yesterday. And because you can't really slaughter the team because they've just won the trophy. They've dug in, they've showed great mentality, and this sun's making me look very, very evil. I'm getting very dramatic looking. But I think when they review the game on Wednesday, when they go back in, there'll be a few things that they will point out. And I love McGregor saying that, and even Rodgers saying that. Oh, we didn't get it all their own way, and that is a winning mentality. That they wanted to have. They've got we've won the trophy. That's absolutely magic. But there's things that we really need to improve.
That's the difference. Right. That's the difference between the two sides, isn't it? If you look at it, we play poorly and we acknowledge it, and the manager and the captain come out openly and say it, yet we still won. And you look at the opposite, what the media and what their guys are all saying, oh, this is progress, and they measure it based on these one-off games where we've not played very well and the fact it's been tight. And you know what? That works in our favour. If they want to see the likes of yesterday as a sign of progress and that they're closing the gap, then, we're all the better for it, because that was us way off it, yet we still won, and we know it. The manager knows it, the captain knows it. They know the standards need to improve, and we're only going to get better.
But big man, it's a one-off game, right?
Yeah.
Aberdeen pushed us close in a semi-final last season, and the gap between Aberdeen at second bottom and Celtic's absolutely closing. It's what you do over the 38 games. Yeah. It's more than likely that they could get a result against us on the 2nd of January. Just because of the circumstances of that game, but it's more than but we could also get a result. But it doesn't mean anything in the bigger picture. Kilmarnock gave us a game a couple of weeks ago. Hibs gave us a game last week. Does that mean the gap's constantly closing? One-off games doesn't matter if what happens over a period of time. And at this moment, the period of time is there's 11 points.
And the other thing, Kev, Alan,
and numerous trophies.
Alan brought it up last week, is we're doing it whilst managing the rotation of the squad. So I reckon that team that we put out at the weekend, and I'm a massive fan of Engels, but I reckon that team we put out was our strongest 11, right? But how often are we playing it? So we're rotating that as well, but still getting the results. We beat Ross County 2-1 away from home, much tighter than you would have liked. And there are going to be games, like you say, just like that, Kev. Just to go back to your boot room point, we use terms like the boot room. And for me, the boot room was about that continuity of a winning mentality. So I know that it goes back to the point where you've got the Liverpool boot room or the Celtic boot room. I'll focus on the Celtic one. So back in the glory days, Jock Stein was the manager. Of course, he had Sean Fallon as his right-hand man. He had Neely Mockin as the trainer come kit man. You had Bo Bruni. Bo Bruni was the physiotherapist who basically managed to survive with a heat lamp. That was it. That was the only expertise he had, a heat lamp. Any injury you had, he gave you the heat lamp. But within that core group was that boot room mentality, Kevin. They used the boot room because that's where they used to go to talk football over copious pots of tea. It wasn't like whiskey and all that. Pots of tea and biscuits, talking about football. But every single one of them knew nothing but success at that particular level within that core group. Even if you look at the 3 Japanese players that have survived, because we've had 6, obviously, we signed 6, Hatate, Maeda and Kyogo have known nothing but success at Celtic. So if you're talking about buying into the mentality, Kev, they're part of that buy-in. They've bought into it. They've known nothing. So their mentality at Celtic is, we don't lose. Never mind, we never stop. We never lose. That's the mentality.
Dyson says that after the game. He says, we have to win every game at Celtic. And so they have bought into that mentality, and that's something, as Brendan Rodgers says on Friday, is earned. It is absolutely earned, and it's down to hard work, and it's no down to having a 3-4 week great period. Yeah. It's down to having a 24-year great period.
Talking of which, Kev,
that's what it's down to.
Yeah, and that takes us right back to the start of the conversation. But a big shout out to Susie McCabe as well for putting people right on off the ball in relation to Rangers having less time to prepare for this game because they played their game 2 days after Celtic. Well done, Susie. If you've not checked it out, go and give it a listen. One final thing I want to talk about, Scalesy, Leo Scalacci, right? So all the stills and all the aftermath of this game is centred on Liam Scales bringing down Czerny, wasn't it? Right? Mm. So I've looked at that. I've looked at it like everybody else. And I think, so please tell me if I'm wrong here, I think it's pretty clear why it was a free kick. Because there's 2 infringements in the same movement. The second infringement is the shirt pulling, right? Which, by the way, he was very, very lucky that he was penalised for the first infringement, which was a kick over the ball. It was a foul. That's the foul. That's way outside the box. The second one with the shirt pull starts outside the box, ends on the line, which means it would have been a penalty. So Scalesy has been very, very lucky in that respect, but it's not a penalty because the free kick was for the earlier infringement, which was the kick. Acsom, what was your take on it? Because this is what's causing the meltdown. This is what everybody's focusing on now. The media, I mean, Neil McCann, you're a pundit, mate. You're not meant to just be a Rangers fan with a mic. You're a pundit. Look at it and also check out the rules and know the rules inside out.
Because I'll be honest, I initially, when I just seen it and I was like, okay, we've got away with one there because it looks like, yep, it's on the line, but I just kind of took the whole thing in you know, as one whole incident. But when I think you mentioned it in the group chat and you broke it down and the kind of rules as to why it was the first incident, that's what was blown for, that was the foul. Then on that basis, 100% it's outside the box. So if we're looking at that, it's a factual correct decision. But yeah, obviously initially when I looked at it, I was like, okay, it looks like we've got away with him. But as you say, he is lucky that's how it's worked and that's how the rules work. But again, this is what they did last year, if you remember. They made a big song and dance about the Alistair Johnson one, if you remember, that was it handball or something, and then it turned out it was offside anyway, but they wanted to make a big story about it. Brilliant, let them do it, because again, the more they deflect and the more they don't look inwards as to the real reasons why they're not winning trophies and why there's a big gap, then that's fine on us. But again, that's going to be what all the calls will be about this week on the phone ends. That's what all the chat will be. And their manager's front and centre of it, you know, and again, that just shows you the difference.
He buys into it. Here's an example, Kev, right? So Liam Scales goes through their player and fouls him. Then Scalesy lands on the ball and catches the ball on the deck, as many footballers do. That's not a penalty if the foul's outside the box. It's the exact same. It's the first infringement. The second infringement becomes immaterial once the first one's given.
At the time, I don't think there wasn't much complaints about them. There wasn't much complaints that it was in the box or anything like that. And this really, really annoys me when you're talking about his tay was on the line of the box. So the whole ball has to be over the byline for it to be a shy. But if somebody's toenail is on the line of the box, it's a penalty. How did that work? Surely you have to be by that line and in the box. If the ball has to be fully out the pitch for it to be a shy or a corner kick, how can your toenail be on the line of the penalty box? Can it be a penalty? That doesn't make sense to me. But as I say, none of them actually moaned about it at the time. I was more annoyed that Scales had lost the ball. Actually, that he had dallied on it as he did, and I thought right away it was for him pulling him down for the kick. Right away, I thought that's where the free kick for now, or that kick's nowhere near the box. So that's what I thought it was. Yeah. But if they want to go, and if anybody thinks VAR hasn't looked at, if anybody doesn't think that VAR hasn't looked at that, then. But what I will say, I reckon we'll get to 5 o'clock. There will be a statement, and John Beaton will never get another Rangers game again.
Oh, fair play. Fair enough. I'm looking forward to Willie Collins. I think it's a monthly show that he does where he comes out and has a look at it. I'd love that. I would love him to come out and have a look at that.
Just wanted to make one kind of final general point. I've seen a lot of people kind of obviously bemoaning our recent form a wee bit and, saying, oh, okay, we won, but the performance wasn't great. And granted, but see this kind of period where we've had November, December, where you've got this many games coming up and so many different competitions. It's always going to be like that. It's about setting the foundations for the second half of the season. And if you actually look at it, unbeaten domestically, only 1 draw in the league, 11 points clear of your biggest rivals, beat them in the cup final, so you've got 1 trophy in the bag, on the brink of a 1 win away from the Champions League next stage. What an absolute tremendous first half of the season it's been. And yes, maybe a few weeks we've not been at our best form, but on the whole picture, this is where you do the groundwork. We've used the rotation brilliantly to get us through all these games, whether it's away Champions League games, home Champions League games, cup finals. And historically, we normally come out the turn of the year stronger. And I think we'll see that again. So I just think if you look at everything in the bigger picture, it's been fantastic. And yesterday, just so relieved and delighted that we managed to get that done. And now we can push on again.
No, you're spot on with that. And by the way, just as Kevin and Acsom were talking, we hit 1888 followers. There you go. 1888 followers. Thank you, every single one of you, for watching today and every day and coming along to our fan zones and supporting what we do. Our last event of the year is on Thursday night. It's for some of the Centenary boys. We've got a treble. It's Roy Aiken, Peter Grant and Pat Bonner with Liam McGrandles providing the live music. There are now 40 tickets left. That's all there are. And you can buy a ticket on the link underneath this video, and you can get a 50% Christmas discount by typing in Acsom 1888. There's that magical number again at checkout. Listen, I've really enjoyed that. Not as much as yesterday, but I've really enjoyed that, guys. Thanks to every single person for getting involved. And thank you to Kevin and Acsom for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.
Cheers.